During our quiet dinner date, his mother barged in and shrieked, "Why wasn't I invited?" My husband, instead of defending me, offered her a seat. Fury rising, I stood up, voice steady but final, "You two enjoy this meal. I'm done being part of this marriage." I met Caleb Mason at a friend's gallery opening in Savannah, Georgia. He had this warm, magnetic energy, like someone who'd been raised right, charming, attentive, the kind of man who noticed when your glass was empty and actually did something about it. We started dating, slow and sweet, and within 2 years, we were married. At first, everything felt almost too perfect. Caleb listened, or at least it felt like he did. We had inside jokes, lazy Sunday mornings, shared playlists. He made me feel seen. And in those early days, I truly believed we were a team. But there was always one shadow at the edge of our light, his mother, Linda. I want to be fair. I really do. I'm not the kind of woman who walks into a family and demands to be queen. I come from small-town roots. I write thank you cards by hand. I remember birthdays. I bring homemade peach pie to every holiday dinner. I don't like conflict. I avoid drama. I even told myself I'd try to understand her, give her the benefit of the doubt, especially since she lost her husband young and Caleb was her only son. But the truth is, Linda had already decided she didn't like me before I even said my first hello. The first time I met her was at her house. Caleb had driven us down to Hilton Head for a long weekend. I remember walking into her pristine living room, where nothing was out of place, and feeling like I had stepped into a museum. She gave me a once-over, top to bottom, then said with a flat smile, "Well, you're taller than I expected." I laughed awkwardly, tried to chalk it up to nerves, but it set the tone. Every visit after that chipped away at me in small, cruel increments. She'd make comments that sounded innocent if you weren't really listening. "You don't wear makeup? That's brave." Or, "That's the dress you're wearing?" Or worse, "My lasagna recipe is a family favorite. I guess you just wanted to try something different this year." Always a smile. Always in front of others. But always just sharp enough to cut if you were the one holding the plate. Caleb brushed it off. "She's just trying to connect," he'd say. "She doesn't mean anything by it. She's from a different generation." Maybe so. But different generations don't hand out spare keys to your house and let themselves in on a Sunday morning while you're in a bathrobe. And when that happened, when I stood in the kitchen, startled, holding my coffee, and she looked me dead in the eyes and said, "I used to wear things like that before I got married too," I knew it wasn't about a generation gap. It was about control. I begged Caleb to set boundaries. Not once. Not twice. Over and over again, gently at first, then with more urgency. "Please talk to her. Tell her she can't just show up unannounced. Tell her I'm not comfortable with the way she speaks to me. Just protect us." But he never did. He'd nod, sigh, maybe even agree in theory, but the conversation never made it past our front door. And little by little, I started to notice just how deep Linda's roots were in our life. We couldn't plan a vacation without checking her schedule first. If we wanted to buy new furniture, she had to be looped in. She had opinions about what color the walls should be, where we kept the dog's food, how I folded the laundry. Once, she even accidentally donated half my wardrobe during one of her surprise visits. She said it was a misunderstanding. Caleb just laughed. I stopped laughing. The worst part? It wasn't just her. It was him too. The man I thought was mine never once told her to stop. He let her commentary roll off his back, but it stuck to me like glue. He let her dig into me, rearrange our lives, rewrite my worth with every passive-aggressive smile, and he never lifted a finger to stop it. There's a kind of silence that grows when you're being ignored, not loud, not obvious, but insidious. And after 6 years of marriage, I realized I had become invisible in my own home. Not because I stopped speaking, but because no one was listening. Caleb's silence was louder than any insult Linda ever threw at me. And that silence was what finally broke me. It was a Tuesday evening when Caleb came home from work and told me he had made a reservation at Palmer's, a quiet, candlelit bistro tucked into the old brick alleys of downtown Charleston. I want us to reconnect, he said, his voice low, eyes softer than I'd seen in months. Things have felt off lately. I looked up from the sink, dish towel in hand, heart split between suspicion and hope. Part of me wanted to believe this was a sign, that maybe he saw the fractures, maybe he remembered the way we used to be, the quiet laughs under fairy lights, the gentle way his fingers traced mine in the car. So I said yes. I took my time getting ready. Not out of vanity, but because I wanted to remember what it felt like to care, to believe it might still matter. I wore the deep blue silk dress he once said brought out my eyes. Curled my hair, spritzed perfume I hadn't touched in a year. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see a woman ready for war. I saw a wife trying one last time to be loved right. Palmer's was dim and warm, the air humming with quiet conversations and the clink of wine glasses. The kind of place where time slows down and you fall back into each other, or at least that's what I hoped. We were seated at a cozy table near the window. For a while, it felt almost normal. He smiled more. We talked about everything and nothing, a coworker who'd confused Zoom with Google Meet, the bartender's mustache, the overpriced breadbasket. I almost forgot. Until I heard her voice. Sharp. Cutting. Unmistakable. Why didn't you invite me? The restaurant fell into an eerie hush, forks hovering mid-air, eyes swiveling toward us like we'd just become the main attraction in a play no one paid for. I turned slowly, heart plummeting. There she stood, Linda, in a leopard print blouse, lips painted a hostile red, and that damn oversized purse hanging off her arm like a trophy. Her gaze pierced through me like I was nothing more than a blemish on her son's otherwise perfect life. You told me you were staying in tonight, she said to Caleb, voice loud enough for every single person in Palmer's to hear. You didn't say you were coming here. I told you I've been dying to try this place. Caleb froze. Visibly. Tangibly. A man caught between two worlds. He looked at me. Then at her. And then, he pulled out the empty chair. My stomach dropped so hard I could feel it echo in my ribs. Just sit, Mom. It's fine. No. No, it wasn't. I stared at him, willing him to take it back, to laugh and say it was a joke, to send her home and look at me like I was still his partner. But instead, he waved to the waiter and asked for another place setting. And that was it. I stood. Calm on the outside. A firestorm beneath my skin. You two enjoy, I said, voice steady but not mine. Because I'm done with this marriage. The sound of chairs scraping stopped. Conversations halted mid-word. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just left. Walked past rows of stunned faces, out the heavy front door, into the cool night air that hit my cheeks like a baptism. I didn't stop until I reached the streetlight at the corner, where the city hummed like it didn't care, like it didn't know my heart had just cracked in two. I called an Uber with fingers that trembled but didn't fail me. I didn't go home that night. Or the next. When I finally returned, Caleb was sitting on the couch playing video games like the world hadn't just turned on its axis. You embarrassed me, he said, not even looking up. I stood there in silence. He finally paused the game and turned to face me. You know how she gets. I just didn't want to make a scene. She would have caused more trouble if I told her to leave. I stared at him, numb, hollowed out. You could have stood up for me. Like a husband. Like a man. Like someone who gives a damn. He said nothing. And in that moment, I knew I had never truly been married. I had just been tolerated. A placeholder. A shadow beside a son too scared to grow up. That night, something inside me shifted permanently. Love didn't die in a storm. It evaporated in silence, faded every time he let her steal a piece of me and said nothing. And so I began to plan. Not to leave with fire. But with precision. I didn't rage. I didn't throw dishes or scream in the middle of the night. That would have been too easy for Caleb, something to blame on me. No, I chose silence. Stillness. And in that stillness, I found clarity. The next morning, he acted like nothing had happened. He left for work with a kiss to the top of my head I didn't return. I just stood there, motionless, and stared at the coffee pot while it gurgled to life. That's when I began disappearing in pieces. I stopped talking unless absolutely necessary. I didn't cook for him anymore, didn't fold his laundry, didn't ask about his day. I slept in the guest room and stopped correcting him when he called it temporary. He didn't notice. Or maybe he did, and chose not to care. Either way, it told me everything I needed to know. While he played the oblivious husband, I became a ghost in our home, but a ghost with a mission. I opened a new bank account at a different branch, in a different name. Transferred my paycheck there, set up a new P.O. box, reset every password I had, and added two-step authentication on every platform. I combed through our finances and realized something that made my blood run cold. I had been the one carrying us all along. The mortgage came from my account. The bills, the groceries, even the new dining table his mother claimed was too modern. I paid for it. And he'd been quietly transferring money to Linda. Tiny sums. $200 here. $90 there. Each with a note, car repair reimbursement, mom's groceries, thanks for the help. Help with what? I printed every bank statement, every Venmo receipt, every email confirmation. I made copies, labeled folders, created backups on a USB drive I kept tucked behind the spice rack. And I still hadn't told him I was leaving. I wasn't ready yet. Not until I had every weapon I needed. Then came the moment that cemented everything. It was a Saturday morning. I was in the kitchen slicing strawberries for pancakes, not for him, just for me, when I heard his phone buzz on the counter. I wasn't snooping. I swear I wasn't. But the screen lit up with a preview that made my hands freeze mid-cut. Did you tell her yet? Mom. I tapped the notification. It opened a group chat. Only two names, Caleb and Mom. The messages scrolled up like a slow, sinking noose around my neck. She's going to find out eventually. You said you'd tell her last week. I'm tired of lying. My heart thudded hard against my ribs. Tell me what? I didn't confront him with yelling or tears. When he stepped out of the shower, towel wrapped around his waist, I handed him the phone with shaking hands and said, "Read it." His eyes darted across the screen. Then his face dropped. He sat on the bed and buried his head in his palms. I was going to tell you. Tell me what, Caleb? He hesitated. Then admitted the truth. Linda had moved into an apartment 2 floors below ours. 6 months ago. She had watched me come and go. Probably peeked from her balcony as I walked the dog, left for work, brought home groceries. She had been there the whole time, and he had helped her move in. Helped her find the unit. Helped her carry her boxes. And then he lied to me. Every day. She didn't want to make it weird, he said. She just wanted to be closer. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal. I stared at him, feeling like I might actually scream, not from anger, but from the sheer absurdity of it. Of being reduced to nothing more than an obstacle in the way of his mother's perfect little kingdom. You let her stalk me, I whispered. And then you lied. That night, I packed a bag and left. Not forever, not yet. But enough to breathe. To think. To plan the next step without his voice in my ear or her perfume lingering in my kitchen. And when I returned, I didn't tell him where I'd been. He asked once. Then never again. I kept gathering. Documents. Receipts. Copies of the condo deed. I combed through every paper in the house until I noticed something odd. The property was partially titled under another name. Linda Mason. Her name was on our condo. I nearly dropped the papers in my hands. Later, my lawyer explained, she had been listed as a silent investor. The paperwork had been pushed through a shady real estate office, one Linda recommended, a family friend who gave us a better rate. And I'd never seen the fine print. Of course I hadn't. Eli had signed it without telling me. That was when I stopped being afraid. They hadn't just hurt me. They had plotted around me. And I was going to burn it all down, legally, slowly, and with every receipt in hand. The day I handed that folder to my lawyer, she didn't say a word at first. She just opened it, flipped through the bank records, property deeds, and payment receipts, then set it down like it burned her fingertips. "Where did this come from?" she finally asked. "My husband," I said flatly. "And his mother." The folder had been given to me during a meeting Caleb requested, the first one since I left. He had texted me, asking to meet for coffee, claiming he wanted to handle things like adults. I should have ignored it. My gut twisted the moment I read the message. But I went, not for him, not even for closure, but because I wanted to see what game they were playing now. He came in carrying a manila envelope. Sat across from me like it was just another Tuesday and said, "This isn't legal. Just a quick settlement. Something to keep it simple." I opened it. At the top was a quitclaim deed. A document that would transfer my ownership of the condo to his mother. "You won't have to worry about the place anymore," he said, like he was doing me a favor. "You're moving out anyway, right? This just makes it clean." I stared at him for a long time. 10 seconds. Maybe 20. Then I stood up, walked away, and didn't say a word. My lawyer, however, had plenty to say. "This is a trap," she said, eyes scanning the fine print. "If you'd signed this, you would have relinquished all rights to that condo. No compensation. No recourse. Nothing." I sank into the chair across from her, my pulse still racing. "I think they've been planning this from the beginning." She nodded. "You're not divorcing a man, sweetheart. You're divorcing a mother-son business operation." That phrase hit like thunder in my chest. I started connecting the dots. Back when we bought the condo, Linda had insisted we use her friend's real estate agency. At the time, I thought it was generous, even thoughtful. She said they'd give us a better rate. She even brought cookies to the signing. But now? That office had been shut down for unethical dealings. Forged documents. Misleading contracts. Guess who signed the closing paperwork? Only Caleb and Linda. They left me out entirely. That's when I realized this wasn't just betrayal. It was premeditated. I thought the worst part was her moving in 2 floors down, spying on me. I thought it was the lies. The control. The years I spent being silenced and overruled. But no, the worst part was this: they built the walls of that house with bricks made from my money and labeled them as theirs. And they thought I'd walk away empty-handed. Oh, no. That night, I went through every drawer in our home. Every file folder. Every password-protected PDF. I cataloged every dollar I'd spent, from down payment to renovations to the ugly kitchen lights Linda insisted we install. Then, the cherry on top, I discovered she had tried to list the condo for sale without telling me. A neighbor texted me, confused. "Saw a for sale sign outside your unit. Are you moving?" I checked the online listing. There it was. My address. Open house scheduled. Contact, Helen Mason. I called the real estate agent listed. He was bewildered. I was told the co-owner and financial backer wanted it sold. Said the other party was already bought out. I sent everything to my lawyer that night. Helen's fraudulent listing was now part of a larger investigation. Her name on the deed? Under legal review. The shady documents? Flagged. The attempted quitclaim scam? On record. Caleb? Quiet. For now. But I knew he wasn't done. He started with guilt. "You're throwing everything away for a grudge." Then desperation. "She was there for me when I had nothing." Then came the fury. "You're ruining my life because you can't get along with my mother." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Because every time they underestimated me, every time they thought I'd roll over, I was already 10 steps ahead, with evidence, strategy, and the law on my side. I wasn't their pawn anymore. I wasn't their daughter-in-law. I was the storm coming to level the foundation they built on lies. It was a Thursday night when the text came in. "Come to dinner at Mom's. Just one time. We need to talk." No begging. No apologies. Just a calm, calculated message that set off every alarm bell in my body. I stared at it for a long time. My first instinct was to block his number and be done. But then I thought, no. I want them to say it to my face. I want to look in their eyes when they realize I'm no longer the girl who used to flinch when Linda raised her voice. So I replied, 7 p.m. I'll be there. I arrived early. Knocked once, just to be polite. Linda opened the door with a Stepford wife smile, as if she hadn't tried to rob me blind and erase me from my own home. Her house smelled like meatloaf and entitlement. I'm glad you came, she said sweetly. Let's be adults about this. I didn't return the smile. Caleb was already at the table, slouched and tired-looking, like a man slowly realizing that the kingdom he inherited was made of sand. Dinner was quiet. Too quiet. Then Linda cleared her throat. We wanted to discuss the condo, she began, smoothing her blouse. About what's fair. Fair. I almost laughed. You were never financially prepared to buy something like that, she continued. Caleb and I made it happen. So naturally, we're protecting our investment. Caleb nodded slowly. It was never meant to go this way. I put my fork down, heart calm, voice colder than marble. You mean the way where you both forged documents, lied to my face, and tried to con me out of my own home? Linda bristled. Don't be dramatic. And that was it. Something inside me snapped into perfect, quiet focus. I stood up. No, this isn't about drama. This is about 6 years of being belittled, controlled, erased. This is about how I folded myself small enough to fit into your family and still wasn't enough. Caleb opened his mouth, I tried. No, Caleb. You didn't. You hid behind her. You never really left her house, you just brought it into mine. Linda stood too now, arms crossed. You don't understand what he's been through. I gave him everything. I turned to Caleb, voice shaking now but firm. And he gave it all to you. Even what he promised to me. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out my own folder, thick, tabbed, and color-coded. Here's every payment I made. Down to the penny. I covered 87% of the condo. I paid for the couch, the appliances, the plumbing when the pipes burst. I bought that home, and you tried to steal it. I dropped the folder on the table. It thudded like a gavel. Silence. Caleb didn't even open it. Just stared at it like it might bite. Linda scoffed. This is vindictive. That's when another voice cut through the room. She's not being vindictive. She's telling the truth. We turned. A woman stood in the doorway, tall, composed, arms folded tightly. It was Aunt Marie, Linda's older sister. I hadn't seen her in years. She's right, Marie said, stepping fully into the room. And you know it. Linda paled. What are you doing here? I was subpoenaed, Marie said. By her lawyer. And while reviewing Helen's financials, I found something. I felt my breath catch. Marie looked straight at me. The money Helen used to help with the condo? It wasn't hers. It came from a family trust. One created by her late husband, meant for the next generation. For grandchildren. She wasn't allowed to touch it without full family consent. Linda looked like she might implode. You had no right. Marie cut her off. You forged documents to get that money. And if this goes to court, and it will, you're looking at criminal charges. Caleb whispered, is that true? But Linda stayed silent. Marie didn't flinch. I only found out because her lawyer reached out to me. Asked for verification. And I gave it. Because I'm not going down with you, Helen. Helen's face twisted in pure rage. She turned to Caleb. You see what she's done? She's destroying this family. I told you not to marry an outsider and now look what's happened. Caleb stood up, finally, his voice cracking. You did this, Mom. You made me lie. You ruined everything. And then, she slapped him. Right there, across the face. A loud, clean snap that echoed. He didn't fight back. Just stood there, blinking, red-faced and shaking. I took my folder, turned to the door. You two can keep your lies. But you're not keeping my life. Or my name. Or my future. And I walked out. It's been 3 months since I walked out of that house, since I left Caleb and Helen standing in the wreckage of their own lies. I live in a much smaller apartment now. 1 bedroom, no marble countertops, no custom backsplash Linda insisted we needed. But every inch of it is mine. The bills come in my name. The key only fits my hand. And the silence? It no longer weighs on me, it soothes me. I no longer wake up wondering if I've said something wrong. I don't triple-check my tone before speaking. I don't flinch when my phone buzzes. There are no cameras behind the curtains, no footsteps pacing overhead that feel like judgment. Just quiet. Just space. Just me. Some mornings I stand at the window with a mug of tea, wrapped in an old sweater, watching the sun rise over the city skyline. And I don't think about Caleb. Not in the way I used to. Not with grief. Not with longing. I think of him now as a chapter, one that nearly swallowed me whole. One I survived. My lawyer has frozen the condo's title. Helen's accounts are being investigated. Her name, once whispered with control and certainty, is now tangled in legal red tape. Marie is prepared to testify. The fraud is undeniable. The damage they tried to do is slowly unraveling, paper by paper. As for Caleb? He sent one final email after the dinner. Apologized. Said he didn't know about the trust fund. Claimed he was sorry. But it wasn't the kind of sorry that changes a man. It was the kind you say when the walls start to cave in and you're hoping someone might still reach out a hand. I didn't reply. Instead, I signed the final divorce papers and had them delivered to his new P.O. box. I changed my last name the very next day. It's strange how light a name can feel once you strip it of the shame it carried. I've started therapy. Every Tuesday at 3 p.m. I'm learning that healing isn't linear. That sometimes grief doesn't feel like sadness, it feels like anger, or silence, or that strange disorientation you get walking into a room and forgetting what you came in for. But mostly, I'm learning that love should never feel like fear. That protection shouldn't have to be begged for. That when someone says you're overreacting, it's often because they're used to you underreacting for far too long. I've also started writing again. I hadn't touched a page in years. Helen once told me it was a hobby, not a purpose. But now the words come back like an old friend I thought I'd lost. Stories, essays, letters I never send. I write them all. Because my voice is mine again. Because I no longer have to lower it at the dinner table or censor it at family gatherings. And to anyone out there, sitting in the dark like I once did, staring at the door and wondering if it's worth walking through, this is for you. You don't have to burn your life down with fireworks and firestorms. You can leave quietly. You can leave with spreadsheets and screenshots and a packed bag hidden in your closet. You can leave with nothing but a whisper and still walk into something whole. You can leave. You can start again. You can choose you, and that is the loudest, bravest thing you will ever do.